Hey guys, how's it going? I'm going to come to y'all with something a little bit different this time. This is going to be my very first deck profile over a deck for the Dragon Ball Z CCG, TCG, whatever it's technically labeled as. Specifically, this is going to be for the FanZ format, which is the original Panini game plus the expansions from the FanZ development team. And it's going to be over an orange Retribution Supreme Kai deck. Now, this deck was actually built by me as a gift for a friend to learn how to play the game, and he's kind of, he's enjoying the game and he enjoys playing this deck, but it's not really, I think, what he really wants to play long term. He's currently working on a black Wheelo deck that he's actually going to be playing for his primary deck. So I figured I'd go ahead and do a profile over the Supreme Kai list. It's the second Dragon Ball Z deck I've ever actually built, so I know it needs a lot of upgrades and improvement, but hopefully someone in the comment section will be able to help me improve this deck for more competitive play. But let's go ahead and get right into it. So Orange Retribution Mastery, clearly the best mastery in Orange, in mine and most people's opinion. It just does everything you want. Lets you get a non-continuous drill the first on your opponent's first turn. When your MP changes levels, you shuffle your drills rather than discard them. And it has a power that turns your next style attack to a free cost, so that you don't have to pay for any power stages for your next energy attack, as long as it's styled. It raises your anger too, and if your MP has changed levels as combat, you tutor for a style drill and place it into play. So, a lot of different things, really nuts. It just does everything you'd ever want out of an Orange Mastery. Alright, so going through the stack, we are obviously playing the only stack currently available to us, the set 10 stack for Supreme Kai. I do suspect personally that as we get more sets, the Kibito Kai will probably be considered to be Supreme Kai for deck building purposes, so there may be some changes in the stack as time goes on. I could be wrong on that, but for those who don't know, the Supreme Kai stack really pushes discard pile control to get advantage during combat. The level 1, when entering combat, allows you to choose up to 2 cards in your discard pile and shuffle them into your life deck. It also has a power, which is an energy attack. You tutor for a god ally and play it, and damage 1 life card. The level 1 power may not seem all that impressive to some, but when paired with Kibito, you can really just kind of get the best card out of your discard pile for combat, and essentially end up with 4 or 5 cards in your hand for combat as opposed to just 3, which is insanely good. Level 2, when entering combat, you look at the top 4 of your opponent's life deck and put them back in any order, so you can kind of give them the worst 3 of those 4 for the next draw. And he also has an energy attack costing 2, lets you choose up to 2 in your discard pile and shuffle them into your life deck, damage for 3 life cards, and hit, you may discard a card from your hand to draw the bottom of your discard pile. So once again, we see some of that discard pile manipulation to get advantage during combat. His level 3 is a little bit more simple. It's probably the worst level in my opinion, but it's still not bad. Power, use when entering combat. Choose up to 5 cards in your discard pile and shuffle them into your life deck. So it kind of, again, lets you manipulate the discard pile for Kibito, or just to prevent your opponent from getting a survival victory on you. And then power, draw the bottom card of your discard pile. And then finally, level 4 has a when entering combat ability. Look at the top 5 of your opponent's live deck and put them back in any order, so you can really screw them on combat. Playing against my friend when he was piloting this deck and I was playing my Namekian Knowledge Piccolo deck, there was a combat whenever he entered on me, and before I get to draw my cards, he stacked the top 5, and I ended up drawing 3 Dragon Balls, and the only card I had in my hand was a Forceful Block, which this deck doesn't run any physicals, so I was just completely hosed that entire combat. But yeah, it also has an energy attack. You may shuffle any number of cards from your hand into your life deck to draw the same number of cards, and it damages for 5 life cards. So if you have dead cards in your hands, maybe you have some drills or some setups or whatever, maybe some blocks that aren't doing you any good and you just don't need them, it gives you a second chance at getting some useful stuff during combat, which is just insane. Supreme Kai is a really fun and very effective, powerful stack that can be played in a number of different styles. I see him mostly in blue and red, but I feel like orange still has something to offer him. So let's go ahead and get into the deck. So we'll start with the allies. Obviously, Kibito. This guy is just insane. If your MP is Supreme Kai, you can use the ability regardless of your MP's power stage. And he has a when entering combat, draw the bottom of your discard pile. This guy is insanely good, and he's the first thing we tutor for every single game with Supreme Kai. Comi. He is mostly in here just to, again, manipulate the discard pile a little bit for us. We essentially get a secondary free rejuvenation during our rejuve step, so he really helps manipulate the discard pile. Shenron, Eternal Dragon, is in here to get back some of our discarded allies. We have several ways of doing so, and Shenron is honestly the slowest, but I still really like him in the deck. If we're against a stage lock deck that's keeping Supreme Kai really low, and we have Shenron take over combat for us, he can get back something like Kibito or maybe Comi, or the next ally, Popo, for those matchups against Namekian. And this deck does primarily play against my Namekian Knowledge Piccolo deck right now. And I also plan on building Radiant Slug, Enlightened Nail, and if they ever unfreeze Restored, I want to build something with Restored. I love Namekian personally, and since I'm the person who gets played against the most, Popo was perfect meta tech to play in this deck. Just getting advantage off your opponent rejuvenating is insane, and this deck is all about generating advantage during combat, and Popo does help do that quite a bit. And for those who don't know, Popo and Comi are both considered to be gods, so they can be tutored with Supreme Kai's ability. Into the drills, Orange Steady Drill and Orange Burning Aura Drill. These both basically do the same thing, except one's for physicals and one's for energies. Basically, if your opponent has not performed a successful attack of that particular type, you can use one of the two drills to stop that particular type of attack. So, Steady can stop an energy attack if you haven't been hit with one already, and Aura Drill can stop a physical if you haven't been hit with one already. Probably staples in most orange decks. Captivity Drill. Your energy attacks gain hit, raise your anger 1, and your MP gains 3 stages. This is primarily an MPPV deck with a survival victory backup plan. So, the ability to raise our anger every time we hit with an energy attack is just insane, and we are an energy-focused deck, so the stage gain does matter. Crying Drill. One of the better options to get if we just don't know what our opponent's playing, what kind of style their deck is, or what their deck's hoping to do. So if we don't know what our opponent's up to, this is usually what we grab off Retribution. It just raises our anger 1, and we can shuffle it from play into our life deck to gain 3 stages. Possession Drill, once again, on the theme about getting advantage during combat. A lot of the time, we'll have a drill in our hand that just either isn't useful for the matchup, or we honestly would rather just have something functional, so we'll use the power, draw 2, and discard the style drill. And worst case scenario, we just discard 2 cards that aren't doing anything for us. It's a great way to get advantage during combat. Calming Drill. Use when entering combat, lower your opponent's anger 1 level. Just solid, it keeps your opponent off MPPV. Investigation Drill, I'm not a huge fan of. No, I'm thinking of I'm thinking of the next drill. Investigation Drill is actually one I'm a big fan of, so ignore what I just said. If an effect would lower your anger by more than 1 level, it's lowered by 1 instead. This is insanely good because there's a lot of anger hate in my meta specifically, so rather than lowering 2 anger with various Namekian effects, or even 3 anger with some of the Saiyan effects, only getting lowered by 1 is sweet. It's Spying Drill I'm not a big fan of. When it enters play, look at your opponent's hand and power return this drill to your hand. It does provide combat advantage in the fact that you'll know what your opponent is up to, but other than that, I just don't feel like it does a whole hell of a lot. So this might get the cut for something a little bit more active, something that puts a little more pressure. Checkup Drill. If it enters during combat, you may tutor for a style defense card and place it into your hand, so get a style block, basically. It has a continuous effect that your attacks deal +1 stage of damage, and an instant power of use at the end of combat to rejuve 2. So, once again, getting some discard pile manipulation, putting things back in your deck, and preventing your opponent by winning via survival victory. And the final drill is Orange Guardian Drill. Power, choose a setup or drill in your hand and place it into play. Gets dead cards out of our hand during combat. Keeps us from having to discard valuable drills at the end of combat. And if we happen to have drawn one as the defending player that we really want to play, it's definitely helpful. We do run 1 ball. We run Earth Ball 7. This is just in here as a one-off and combat effect. Nothing really new. Everyone's familiar with what this does. Into the setups, we're running 2 Visiting the Past. I've talked so much about how discard pile manipulation is important, and getting advantage on your opponent is important, and Visiting does that better than practically anything else in the game. 2 orange encouragement. I'm not a big fan of this card, but it does work. Power, raise your anger 1, search your discard pile for a style drill and play it. And if you change levels as combat, you can tutor for a style drill and play it. So, sorry, place it into play specifically. Small difference, but it does matter. It's not huge, but it does provide some incremental advantage. I'm thinking of swapping it for something a little better. 2 Confrontation. I've harped on this quite a bit. I'm going to keep harping on it. We're about combat control and getting advantage over our opponent. Confrontation does a good job of this. I'm thinking about upping the count to 3. I just can't decide if it's really worthwhile. Hopefully someone in the comments will let me know. What do you think? Should I keep it at 2 or should I go to 3? I only run 2 Telepathy, and I know a lot of Supreme Kai players are going to find this blasphemous. I did run the 3rd for a little bit, and honestly, it just wasn't worth including. Having the 2 Telepathy and the Earthball 7, rather, I find to be better than running the 3 Telepathy. Earthball can't be stopped by a Heroic Sphere, and while it doesn't make everyone discard down to 0 cards on the end step, and it doesn't have the endurance that the Supreme Kai Telepathy has, I honestly just feel like the ability to get around Sphere is much more viable. 2 Meditation. This card is insanely good. There was a game that was recently played where I was playing Namekian Knowledge Piccolo, and I was about to win by MPPV. I was at 3 anger. I had played a right throw and was shuffling in a Dragon Ball, and then my friend just slammed Orange Meditation, reset the anger to 0, and then won by MPPV the same exact turn. It is insane. It is really good against MPPV decks, and it's crippling. And if you're not against a deck against a deck that happens to be winning by MPPV, you can just discard it to perform a style attack, costing 2 stages and dealing 5. So it has uses no matter what. I love versatile cards. And then I run 1 Sphere. Again, I tried more than 1 in the deck at first, but I just didn't find that I needed it all that often. I might bump it back up to 2 in time, but for now, the 1 Sphere works for me. Into the blocks. Time, nothing really needs to be said. This card single-handedly wins combats. 3 orange Duke. It's obvious we're going to be running Omni Blocks in our deck. Anyone that, if you have the option, you obviously want to include as many Omni Blocks as possible. Stops the physical or energy, search your discard pile for a style drill and rejuve it. And if you have 3 or less drills, if you have less than 3 drills, you may place it into play instead. Banish after use. So it blocks any kind of attack and either rejuves a drill or places it into play. 3 Redirection. Block an energy, raise your anger 1, and if you have more than 2 drills, raise it 2 instead. Nice and solid. 2 Dismissal. Stops an energy attack. You may shuffle the drill you control into your life deck to search for a drill and play it. Usually we're going to use this to get rid of a drill we've already used this combat and go find something a little bit more effective. More often than not, it was used to shuffle in a possession drill and go get a crying drill to just you get the anger gain and change levels. And the only physical block in the deck are 3 Refocus. I'm thinking about working in at least 2 more physical blocks, as I feel like the block count is a little bit low now. But Endurance 1, block a physical, raise your anger 1, and search your discard pile for a drill and place it into play. Nice and solid, is doing everything we want to do. Into the energy attacks, I am running 3 Supreme Kai Ki Blast. This card is insanely good for us. Endurance 1, energy costing 2, and then you tutor your life deck or discard pile for any ally and play it. Or you search your banished zone for a god ally and place it into play. So, place it into play 5 stages above 0 specifically, and it damages 5 life cards banished after use. So this is basically an overpowering attack for Supreme Kai, but it can also hit the banished zone, which is insanely good. Now, it will only put it into play 3 stages above 0 if it's from your discard pile or your life deck, as opposed to overpowering attack, which I think put it into play 5 stages above regardless. But the added endurance and the ability to recur from the banished zone is so good, especially here in this meta where discard pile hate is so prevalent. Big fan of this. Has to be a 3 of. 3 PowerPoint. I don't see a lot of folks running PowerPoint in their orange Supreme Kai decks, and I really don't know why. 3 endurance is solid, energy costing 2, damage for 6, and if it hits, you tutor for a style drill and place it into play. Honestly, it's doing a lot of the things we like doing. It helps push that survival victory backup plan, and it's getting drills out of our deck, which is wonderful. Big fan. 3 orange rage. 1 endurance, energy costing 2, raise your anger 2, damage 5. Nice and simple. It just helps push our MPPV. 3 orange eruption. This card is pretty freaking sweet. Energy costing 1, raise your anger 2, lower your opponent's anger 2, and it damages for 2, vanishes after use. It is anger control and it is anger gain for a very low stage cost. On suggestion and recommendations from someone on the Facebook page, I'm running 2 copies of Orange Electricity. These actually replaced a couple of subpar performing blocks that were in the deck. Heroes only, banish after use, energy costing 1 stage, damages for 4 life, raise your anger 1, and prevent all damage from your opponent's attacks in his or her next action this combat. So it kind of acts like a block. It's a preemptive block though. The main thing here is that it is actually an aggressive attack. It puts a little pressure on the opponent, and it does anger gain, which I'm a big fan of. So definitely liking the 2 electricity. I'm debating adding a 3rd. 2 fierce attack. Once again, debating adding a 3rd in this deck. Endurance 2, energy costing 1. Damage from your style to energy attacks cannot be prevented this combat. Damage 4 and hit. Raise your anger 2 and lower your opponent's anger 2. Once again, it's pushing our MPPV. It is pushing our survival victory in the form of preventing the damage from being blocked. It has decent endurance to keep us from having our anger being lowered by a crit effect. It is just wonderful. 2 left burst, energy costing 2. If you haven't changed levels this combat, you raise your anger 2, damage for 5, and if it hits, you search your banish zone for a non-continuous drill and rejuvenate it. Nice and solid. Bit of a meta call here. I only run 2 orange stare downs. There just aren't that many setup drills or allies from opponents' decks that I really care about banishing. There are a few decks that run them, so that's the reason why there are still 2 copies here, but the 3 was just underperforming so poorly in my meta. So, obviously, if you're in a more standard meta, something a little bit more regular, this might be worth including a 3rd copy of, but for me, it's only really worth the 2. And the last card are 2 copies of Blinding Energy Move. We're all about combat control, and being able to just end combat when we need to is sweet. The fact that it doesn't cost stages to perform is great, because if we get stage lock, we can just pay the cost of banishing the top 3 of our life deck, I believe it is. Top 2 of our life deck, and then damage for 30 life cards. It is a solid include in the deck, and it just gives us more additional control over combat. These are also another reason why I don't run the 3 telepathy. I just have so many ways of manipulating combat that I didn't feel like I needed it. So yeah, that is my Orange Retribution Supreme Kai deck. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below if you want to see more Dragon Ball Z content. I plan on putting out a lot more, but I definitely want to know what the interest is for it. If you have any recommendations on how to upgrade this deck, I definitely want to hear it. I love playing Supreme Kai. He is so much fun. He does so much stuff. I love the control he provides over combat, the advantage he provides over combat. He's honestly one of my favorite personalities to play in the current environment. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace, and take care.